All guests on ZASLOW Show 2.0 brought to us by the official beer of the program, Johnny Cuba. European roots with that Caribbean soul. A refreshing German lager in a can. Pick up a six-pack of Johnny Cuba. That's how you're going to enjoy the tournament starting tomorrow. Your local Sedanos, Presidente, Winn-Dixie, Fresco y Mas. Make sure you always drink responsibly. And don't forget Johnny Cuba's mantra, stay tranquilo. Joining us now is our pal. Good to see. I saw him last week in New York City. Good to see him here again. Our pal is Mark Zinno. You hear him on ESPN Radio, certainly on the weekends. Zinno, good to see you. Appreciate you hanging out with us. We're going to get some picks. We're going to get some winning plays from you here. But first, when you see the tournament is coming around, like tomorrow, what is your first memory of the tournament? You're a kid. The first time you noticed, oh shit, this is like a really cool event.
The two that stand out are Santa Clara beating Arizona as a 15-2 back in the early 90s. That was, I think, the first time it had happened. And Bryce Drew, Valpo.
Yeah.
That was Bryce Drew, Valpo was the they made such a huge deal of that dude. I mean, look, it got him drafted. Nobody knew who Bryce Drew was until he played a couple of games in March, and it got him drafted. And he was not really any good in the NBA at all because he wasn't an NBA player. But a couple of GMs went, "Whoa, we can use that guy. Yeah, that's really good. Look how big he came up." Yeah, well, you know,
it got the entire Drew family on the map.
Yes, that it did.
Yeah, 100%. My favorite. I was talking about this yesterday too. Like the first time that I really noticed the tournament, early '90s. I think it was '91 when Duke finally beat UNLV. It was like a really big deal. I'm like, oh, this is really cool. Yeah. That was like the first time it stuck with me.
I grew up in New York, so college sports weren't a thing, right? New York's a pro sports town. So I didn't care, other than St. John's, I didn't care about, college basketball. I vaguely remember the Duke UNLV, the running Rebels and Jerry Tark. I remember hearing like a lot about it, but I never paid attention. It wasn't until I got into like high school age where I really was like, okay, now this is a big deal.
What is your favorite Cinderella story from the tournament?
I mean, wow. I mean, I don't go to like George Mason or any of those things. I'm more of like, look, watching the Terps win the title in 2002 for Gary Williams was pretty awesome. It's not a Cinderella. They were, I think, a 1 seed or a 2 seed. But
and remember Juan Dixon right at the buzzer in the first weekend. Otherwise, it all doesn't happen.
Right. I thought that was pretty cool because I was living in Maryland at the time. I thought Villanova's run a couple of years ago with Jay Wright, was a lot of fun to watch. I mean, I look at those kind of things more than, Cinderellas are great stories, but unless you win it all, it's like, I mean, Cinderella eventually got with Prince Charming. It's not like she just went to the ball and we never heard from her again. Like, she eventually got married to Prince Charming. And if you don't, I'd rather talk about the champions and the runs that, were nice, but cute, but never really lasted.
Do you root for just nonstop madness? Because I like a little bit of madness, but if there's nonstop madness, you don't get all the good teams in the Sweet 16. No, I want the really good matchups.
That's why I've always said that for years. I don't need, when Butler came around, like I didn't need Butler in the Final Four against Duke. Nobody cared because it's Butler, right? Like there was the
you must have hated last year.
There was the argument last night about Virginia, why don't we just pick a feisty mid-major? I saw somebody on Twitter say, I'm like, you don't need a feisty mid-major. Just pick the qualified team like St. John's or Seton Hall, and this is fine. Like, I don't need the Cinderellas. I don't need the small schools. I don't care. I'd rather see the big power programs play each other. I think it's a better product. I think you get a better brand of basketball. Again, these runs are nice, but now as you do more and more sports betting, I want less and less variance. I'd like to know and predetermine the outcome as best I can before some guy nobody's ever heard of who shot 27% in his high school games and somehow was a walk-on somewhere going off for 6 for 8 from three-pointers and changing the scope of a game. It's when I want to jump through the TV screen and tackle that guy and you just get him off the court. Somebody take a bat to his knee so we can win this damn game. Yeah, so less variance for me is better in my line of work now.
Mark, that Virginia was a vomit last night. I had to turn it off. I need this shit out of my life.
I mean, I said, look, makes my eyes bleed. I'd rather watch my parents have sex. Like it's just, it was that appalling to watch them try to play offense. And I was very vociferous on Twitter about Virginia being a joke and that the committee absolutely got that wrong ahead of time. I will say this, I'll caveat it by saying, look, what you do in the tournament does not validate or invalidate whether you belong there, right? Like those are two separate events that are not tied together, although people want to tie them together. Same thing with the college football playoff. Team gets in, they get smoked in the first round, and then somehow, oh, they shouldn't have been it. No, those two teams are not related whatsoever. There was no way to know when the season started and going through who the opponent was going to be in that round. So, but I think they got it wrong on Virginia, clearly. Again, St. John's was 25th in Ken Palm, the highest team to be left out of this thing in favor of Virginia, who was in the 40s. Like, stop. Like, come on. It was pretty obvious they were better teams. So it's okay. It's still going to be a good tournament, and we're still going to have a lot of excitement. Although it's wide open this year, and I think that actually leaves us to more chalk than upset.
Why is that?
Because, across the board, the talent level kind of is leveled off a little bit with all the major power programs due to the transfer portal and everybody moving around. There's not really like a, other than what you see from UConn and maybe one or two other teams, it's not really like a dominant team. So we think it's wide open from a championship perspective. But the depth of talent for all those teams across the board is a lot better because guess what's not really happening? There aren't a lot of guys transferring down to schools now and they can transfer across, right? Used to transfer down because you couldn't play. Now I can transfer within the same conference and go play there. I can go to another equal level conference and go play there. So, the idea of getting guys, i.e., again, where I went to Loyola, Maryland, getting guys from Maryland to come play at Loyola, getting guys from UConn to go play at Vermont, right? Like, it doesn't work that way. The guys from UConn, now they go play at Seton Hall, right? Because I could start on Seton Hall. I can't start on UConn. The guys at Maryland, I can't play there. I'll just transfer to Rutgers. I'll go play there. They're not done. So, I just think that there aren't that really all these sexy mid-majors this year's they're not impenetrable. James Madison, College of Charleston, Vermont, there's a lot of these teams out there that I just don't think really, without getting a really bad performance from their opponent, I don't think they get by. Remember last year, all 4 12 seeds had won, right? So you're not getting that again. Right. I think you probably get 2, if not 3, 5 seeds that advance. Only one of them gets by, although James Madison is on the short list.
All right, let's do some picks then. Let's start out with some games for tomorrow. Give me some of your better plays, man. Let's make that money. Come on.
Mississippi State. Izzo in March is a thing that I don't believe in. It's not really true. Why? Because he's 24, 23, and 1 against the number since 2006 in March. So, again, now for him to cover this number, he's just got to win the game, right? It's a 1-point spread, so it's not going to matter. But this is a Mississippi State team. I think that if you watched them play against Auburn, they were really gritty. They were able to take a very talented, very complete Auburn team and push them to the limit for 40 minutes. Their defense is what sells me. Michigan State lives and dies by the 3, and if they're not hitting them, forget about it. They're dead in the water. One of my favorite plays, my biggest play for the weekend will be Drake. Yes, the Drake, who ended up beating Indiana State in the Missouri Valley and taking over that conference. But that is a complete mismatch for so many games. Why is it slipping my mind who they're playing?
Washington State.
Thank you, Washington State. I knew it wasn't a very good team. It's a complete mismatch for Wazoo. Like, it just doesn't work out well. Drake does so many things well on the offensive end. When you talk about their top 40 in the country in adjusted offensive efficiency, effective field goal percentage, 3-point shooting, 2-point shooting, free throws, like the Cougars have no margin for error. If they're not hitting at 45% above, guess what? Drake's just going to start to pull away with them. They don't play super fast, Drake, but they share the hell out of the basketball. They are one of the best assist teams in the country, and they don't turn the ball over. They're 14th in the country in turnover percentage on offense. A big pick and roll team. It'll create open shots for them. I don't think Washington State has really the sort of chutzpah to keep up in this thing here. So I really like Drake. I'm playing BYU in the first half. And the reason I'm doing that is, again, when you get these teams that live and die by the 3 like BYU does, they're taking on a Duquesne team from the A-10 that, obviously people can't spell Duquesne, let alone where it is or even watch the basketball game against them. So, but this is a BYU team that lives and dies by the 3. You'll know early on whether they're going to struggle this whole game or they're going to get out to a big lead and force a Duquesne offense that isn't that great to try and play catch up, right? Like I have this saying, I say it all the time. If they ain't covering early, they ain't covering late. And, when it comes to laying 8.5, I jumped in early and got it at 4. It's probably 4.5, if not 5 now for BYU for the full, for the first half, closer to 9 for the game. But if they're struggling to hit from 3 early, guess what? All the momentum's with Duquesne. Like, yes, there is a game script where they could struggle for the first 20 minutes and then come out and go 8 of 11 in the second half from three, sure, but that's typically not what happens. Teams that are hot from the beginning usually stay hot and tail off towards the end, or, they're pretty consistent throughout the entire game. They just have a hot hand and go there. So those are my games for Thursday.
Friday.
If you want to look to Friday here,
yeah,
card's getting a little bit bigger. So San Diego State will be another first half bet for me against UAB. This is another one of these 5-12 matchups. Look, let's just look at this objectively. Like, UAB isn't a real true 12 seed. Let's just say, for argument's sake, that the team that won the American was South Florida, right? The team that was there all year long. South Florida might have garnered an 11 seed, right? I don't think they would have garnered a 10 because they're just not that good. But if the American was kind of slotted right there, that's a different contest. UAB didn't even have to face FAU in the finals. They beat Temple to get here. This team does not belong in this tournament at all. They're a bad defensive team, the Blazers. There's 202nd in the country in defensive adjusted efficiency. And the teams in the Mountain West that are that level or worse, San Jose State, Fresno State, Wyoming, and Air Force. Zaz, in a sample size, SDU won those games by an average margin of 77-59. So they won by 16 points, or 18 points, rather. I just don't see how UAB offensively can keep up. They have not seen a team defensively like San Diego State. The best two teams in the American, defensive-wise, are 38th and 58th in adjusted defensive efficiency. San Diego State's 9th. Like, we're at a completely different level here. Yeah. San Jose State only allows 31 points in the first half. So in case they're not playing well and San Diego State's clunky offense at times isn't off to a fast start, I still feel pretty good about only having to lay 3 here, right? It's one possession. They could literally be tied, chuck up a 3 at the end of this thing. I could walk out of there with a push, right? So, get the number really kind of is what enticed me. I think San Diego State covers the game anyway, all the way out. But in case they start out a little bit clunky, I played the first half just because the number told me to do it. I thought really like it was advantageous when I got a 3 for a 6.5, 7-point spread. New Mexico, -2 over Clemson. ACC's way overvalued with the exception of Duke and North Carolina. They are a team that isn't very good, and New Mexico is. New Mexico is going to just beat them on both ends of the floor. We get a short number here, and I'm going to tell you that the 10 seed is a 2-point favorite over the 7 seed. Speaking of ACC, Duke, I'm going to lay the 11.5 or the 12 with them. Like, I don't think Vermont really has an answer for Kyle Filipowski. Not many people do, but they're just going to get outsized and out-athleted. That's not a word, but you get my point, right? Like, Duke athletes all around are just going to be phenomenally better. The America East doesn't even present anything remotely close to this. I know Vermont is that team that we always see in the NCAA tournament every year, and they win a game here and there. They upset somebody. This is not like a Vermont team like we've seen in years past that shoots the hell out of the 3, gets up and down and runs. They're just not the same team that we've seen in years past. And I think that's a common mistake a lot of people when they do their brackets make. Oh, yeah, Vermont's been here. I've seen them win games before. Yeah, that's a different team, guys. Like, you can't just look at the jersey and go, oh, it's going to be exactly the same. That's not how it works. So I think Duke, it's the one big spread I'm willing to lay. I think Duke absolutely ends up covering this number. They should be up by 8. If they're not up by double digits at half, I'd kind of be surprised. I think that's how much better they are. And then you ready for the contrarian play of the tournament here?
Yep.
College of Charleston, Alabama. Their total, 173.5. It's the highest total that we've seen in 20 years in this tournament, right?
Going under?
Going under, 100%. There are so many things that have to go right for this to hit. And here's the thing about College of Charleston. Like, I know they get up and down. I know they run. I know they could score. One, last year's team was better than this year's team. That's number one. They lost 5 seniors from last year's team. They're a little bit more inexperienced. That'll show up against a team like Alabama. 2, College of Charleston ain't scoring against the athletes that Alabama has. You got to remember that's part of it.
They don't defend Alabama. They don't defend.
I understand that they don't defend against SEC level athletes and SEC level competition, which was the 2nd or 3rd best conference in the country, not the Coastal, formerly the Colonial. I don't know why we can't say Colonial anymore. Is that what it is?
I don't know. I don't know if that's why.
They got, it's not the Colonial Athletic. It's Coastal.
Is it because were we offended? Is that why? Is that what happened?
I think that's what happened. Somewhere along the line, the idea of colonists offended
Okay.
people. Anyway, so we don't have 13 colonies. We have 13 coastals. Anyway, moving on, but my political rant over. So anyway, it's not the Coastal Athletic Association. Alabama is still long and fast and athletic. And if you go back to the beginning of the year, for as bad as their defense was, you saw some examples against lesser competition where they were able to play defense. Like, I just think so many things have to go right here. And if you are Nate Oates and you're the head coach of Alabama, like, if you in your first game in this tournament can't defend lesser competition, how do you expect to do it in the second game when theoretically you're playing a 5 seed? Right? Like, I mean, like, if you can't set a tone for at least 20 minutes where you are better than your opponent defensively by a wide margin, then yeah, I mean, we get so much in a tempo and everything else in a game like this, and the public loves the over. So when it first came out, I waited because it started at 171. It ticked up. I think we hit the height of the market. You might see this come back down a little bit by the time we get to Friday and this thing tips off. But again, I say all that to say so many things have to go right, and 1, 2, or 3 minute scoring drought might be enough just to get this thing to go under, right? Like, I mean, you have to make both teams got to go 80% from the free throw line.
Right.
Both teams got to shoot at least 45% from the field. Both teams got to hit at least 35% of their threes. Like, you're asking a lot just over the course of a 40-minute game to happen. And if College of Charleston gets behind early and is forced to shoot threes, that's a problem. Alabama's still got a really good perimeter defense. They're top 40 in the nation in three-point field goal percentage defense. So because they're lengthy and athletic, they can defend on the perimeter and they can close out quick on guys. So, that blowout game script could be there, and blowouts always go under, right? Because one team is just not doing enough to pull their weight as far as it is. And once Alabama gets a 12-point lead, when we get past the 16-minute timeout, what's going to happen? Dribble, 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 dribble. We're just going to wait. We're going to dribble. We're going to take this thing a little bit slower. And then at 15 seconds, we'll start running our fast-paced offense, right?
All right.
I mean, that's why I said so many things have to go right to get over this number. Kentucky, different story. Florida, different story against Alabama. Those are like-minded opponents. This is a different deal with College of Charleston.
Final four, who you got?
Oh, man. Auburn is at the top of my list. I don't have UConn there. Auburn's at the top of my list. I have a future on Auburn to win the whole thing.
Okay.
So I will put Auburn coming out of the East region. Give me Arizona coming out of the West, although I think North Carolina has a really, really good shot to get there. You can't trust Purdue, so give me Tennessee coming out of the Midwest. And you ready for this?
Yeah.
And I can't say it with any certainty because nobody knows right now what the status of Tyler Kolek is of Marquette. If he is healthy, I think Marquette's coming out of that region. I think Marquette is one of the most complete teams in the country, and Tyler Kolek is one of the best players in the country. The problem is, I don't think he's playing in round 1, and I don't know. I hope he's going to be for round 2. If they don't have him, they might be dead in the second round. They might lose to Western Kentucky in the first round without him. Like that is not out of the realm of possibility. He's that much of the team. But if he is there and he is healthy, I think Marquette is every bit as good as UConn. I said all season long, and I follow the Big East because it was my conference I followed growing up at St. John's. I followed it for years. I thought they were better than UConn. I thought they were maybe a point worse, as far as power ratings are concerned for us handicappers who power rate their own teams. I only thought they were a point less. I thought they were stride for stride with them. I know they went into the game in Hartford against Connecticut, got blown out by 30. And even the second game without Kolek, they were able to keep it tight for the most part. The game that was at Marquette. So I think they're really, really talented. I just don't know what his status is. If you told me right now he's healthy, I would put a future on Marquette to be in the Final Four and win the national title.
Wow, there you go. All right. Let's do this again in I don't know, maybe even next week, but certainly before the end of the tournament. I'm trying to get the winning plays here. You did an excellent job, Mark. Tell everybody how they can get more of your plays, where they can read you, Twitter, anything you got going on. Go ahead.
At Mark Zinno, MarkZinno, both on Twitter and Instagram, and WT.buzz/MZ over at Wager Talk. WT.buzz/MZ over at Wager Talk will get you to where I post all my plays there. So check out Wager Talk, wagertalk.com. And of course, all the videos, the Wager Talk YouTube channel as well as a lot of great information. All the best handicappers in the country over at Wager Talk will be there for you guys as well. But again, at Mark Zinno, MarkZinno.
Awesome. Excellent job, Mark. Thanks for hanging out with us today. I appreciate it.
You got it, brother. Anytime, Zaz.